Hey, Shawnee from SpeedCubeReview.com. Let's talk about how to rebuild a 4x4 cube. Now, there's some tutorials out there already, and one thing I want to note is that most 4x4s are the exact same or similar design, where it's a 5x5 with smaller internal pieces and large external ones. So you can see some of those pieces in there move around, and that's really how it works. Now, some of them have different things on how to keep them stabilized so they're not too wobbly, but most of them have that same idea. This is the KungFu 4x4. I was going to rebuild my Kong's Design Mei Yu, but I don't even know if I have all the pieces anymore because that exploded on me. So just to make sure, I'm going to use this one. So we're going to kind of go step by step. First, what I need to do is take this apart. So here we go. And actually, while I'm taking it apart, let's talk about this. There are going to be these different edge pieces. And we might have to unscrew it a little bit, but this one's coming apart pretty well. So we've got edge pieces, and there are 24 of those. Then we have centers, and there's 4 of each color center. And for these internal pieces, there's going to be 3 connecting each center, 2 smaller ones and a larger one. And that's pretty much how most of them are made up. Now, they have different mechanisms for stabilizing themselves. And this one, you can see, has a little bump. A lot of them have that bump there. And what that does is it keeps certain pieces from moving around too much. Lastly, we have these corners, and there are 8 corners. Just get the rest of these now. So first, as far as this goes, we've got this center piece that spins around. A lot of 4x4s are having this now too. Sometimes you'll see that there's one center that has something more on it, like a larger piece. This one does not. So there's really no specific place that we need to start. One thing also you'll notice is since these have a bump, the center stalks only go in one certain way, or it might be 2 different ways. So you want to make sure that that's curved, just angled at 45 degrees. Usually what will happen on some 4x4s is when I get to the very end, I'll have to turn these a little bit, like unscrew it a little bit, alter it, and put it back in. These seem locked into place. So now I'm not going to unscrew it anymore. You get the general idea. And now, here's the hardest thing. You need to first put 3 of those smaller pieces between these 2 centers. And that's where either you can use one of 2 things. You can put a little bit of tape on it to hold them in, or I'll sometimes use some heavy lube. And I'll put a little drop, and it kind of works a little bit like glue. Then after the cube's put together, you move it around and the lube just spreads around. So these latch onto each other. Let's find, how does that go? There we go. You can see like this. The small piece goes right into the big piece. Right like that. And then we have one more small piece right here that goes on the exact same way. And these small pieces are the exact same, so you don't need to figure out which one goes on which side. Here's where it gets tricky, getting them into here. The first time I ever had to put a 4x4 together, or a lot of times when I put a 4x4 together, it can be quite frustrating. So just know it might take some time. Okay, so these don't want to stay in place at all. So I'm going to use a little bit of heavy lube. I've got some Speed Cube Shop Weight 6 here, and that's pretty thick. All I'm going to do is just put a dot here, and put a dot on the other side, and that's going to hold that into place a little bit better. Same thing over here. Now, and there we go. So I've placed those in there. Hopefully they don't slide around anymore. Slid around a little bit. So I finally got those pieces in there. It took me a few tries. Now, I could tighten this down just a little bit to help keep it in place, but it seems pretty steady right now. So I'm going to do one more over here, and then we can really get going with rebuilding it. This first step is probably the hardest because once you get past there, it kind of keeps itself together pretty well. So what I'm going to do, again, same sort of thing. Line up a couple of those pieces. And actually I'm just going to do 2 of them and then slide that third one in. That seemed to work pretty well for this one. I found every 4x4 has their own little difficulty and trick for it. No! It's a horrible idea for a video. Okay, so I got these first couple parts in. Probably took about 20 minutes to do this. So now, while this is hopefully not going to fall apart on me, I'm just going to put some of these pieces in. Now, it really doesn't matter which order you put them in. The only real thing you need to know is corners if you don't want to have to take anything apart or twist anything. So, put in one of the centers, and then an edge on either side. And a corner. Now, this just happens to be all the same color. I didn't mean for that. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing and continue over here. So I need another center. Where's another center? There we go. So you can see here where everything kind of goes into place. And actually, before I go any farther than that, I'm going to put a little bit more in down here. And this will all help keep this into place a bit more. So what I'm going to do is drop one of the bigger ones in first. I'm going to kind of pull this center thing up. And you want to keep watching those other internal pieces so they don't shift around. And then one of the smaller ones just slides right in. And what happens with this is you're kind of bending the centers out a little bit to get these to fit, which causes the other internal pieces to kind of shift. And since there's tension on them, that's why it's so hard to get these together. I'm kind of curious how they do this in the factory, because I'm sure they have a method that goes really fast. And I don't think it's automated. Okay, so that one's in. So now we can keep building up from there. You can actually see this center goes right inside, or this inner piece goes right inside that center. Okay. So now let's kind of build up this side. So now how I said to watch the corners, so yellow's facing down in that one corner. I'm going to put yellow or white facing up. So yellow and white are always facing opposite. That should make it so you don't have to flip anything afterwards. And all the other issues can be dealt with just the parity algorithms. So I'm going to turn this on its side and put in some edges on this other side. That way it builds that up. And like I said, this isn't going to do too much over here to keep it in line, but it's just nice little security. You can see if something's moving a little more easily. Now this is an easy spot to insert some of these other internal pieces, because I can just sort of drop this in. Now I've got to move this center up to get that in right there. And then just drop these other smaller pieces in. Now that that's in, I can build up this whole row. And with this little gap right here, I can drop one of these small pieces right in there. And then I'm going to try to put these two in at the same time, just how I did for that other one. There we go. And then we can build up this side, and then we'll have over half of it done. And now, because I've got this whole row done, I can just make it flat and then build up from here. And this is going to stay a lot more stable now that we've got this first base on here. try something. This might turn out bad. We're going to find out. I'm going to loosen this a lot. Just sort of lay each one in here and see if it'll stay in on its own. Just lay this right here. Will that stay in? Yes, it will. So let's drop this one in. I'm going to put all 4 of these in right now. I'm just going to screw this in just a little bit. See, where's that notch at and where does it need to go? This way. Okay. And before I finish that off, let's put these centers in. And with a little wiggling, this should just push right in. And then last thing to do is just solve it. And a lot of lube on my hands right now. So, some final thoughts on putting a 4x4 together. It's going to be frustrating. I've never put a 4x4 together that hasn't been frustrating at some point. And it's always those first couple spots because it's getting them in and then keeping them there. The tension of the cube helps keep them together. If you have the tensions on the centers, but also when there's tension on it, that's going to want to push them out. So that's the most frustrating part. Once you get that, it's just building up from there and being patient with it. So hopefully this helps. If there's any questions you have other than that, leave them in the comment section below. Hit like, subscribe for more content like this in the future, and as always, stop by speedcubereview.com for more news and reviews.